The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. This is Jennifer Schaus coming to you live from Washington, D.C. And our program today is covering GSA Schedules, what's in it for you. This is a joint program with the Virginia PTAP, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. I think I have an old logo on there. I apologize. We are joined by Edna Sergio from the PTAC, which this is the correct logo. And Edna, I will turn the floor over to you to say what you need to for the PTAC. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Welcome and thank you everyone for joining us in today's webinar. My name is Edna Sergio and I work at Virginia PTAC. We are a sponsored program of George Mason University and funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the Defense Logistics Agency. If you are a Virginia-based business, please sign up to be a client and take advantage of the free one-on-one counseling service that we offer. If you are based outside of Virginia, please take advantage of your local Procurement Technical Assistance Center by finding your local office at the Association of Procurement Technical Assistance Center website. We also offer bid match service subscription to all our clients. Bid match service is a yearly subscription that generates companies' unique search criteria. You must be a Virginia PTAC client to subscribe to our bid match. If you're interested, please check the bid match profile on our website. I will also be emailing you the evaluation survey at the end of this class. And please make sure to fill the form for us and for your instructor. The slides and the recorded session will be emailed to you at the end of the webinar. Please make sure to contact us at ptac@gmu.edu or give us a call, and make sure to look at our training calendar for any additional courses that you might need to help you with your business. And I will let Jennifer take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Edna. Yeah, as Edna said, the Virginia PTAC offers a lot of great classes, one-on-one training, mentorship, and I assume maybe towards the end of the year, maybe next year, you guys like us will get back to some in-person events. But they're a great resource, and the contact information was on that last slide. Slides and the recording, like Edna said, will be sent out. Give us about 24 hours to get those out to you guys. It'll probably come before that, but just we will get them out. So I'm going to go through just a couple quick introduction slides, then we'll dig into the program. This class is usually done in person with a whiteboard or some sort of chalkboard, and it makes it a little bit more interactive. So if you do have questions as I'm going through the program, you should have a control panel on your right-hand side. There's a section there towards the bottom that says questions, and you can just type your question in there. As I see them come up, once I get to the end of a slide, I'll try to answer the question for you. And I think we've got a smaller group today, maybe about 30 people here. So I'll try to answer the questions again as they come in. They're anonymous, so I'm not going to call out your name. So nothing to be embarrassed about as far as asking questions. I'll do my best to answer everything that I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll look into it and get back to you as soon as possible. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and dig in here. So just a quick blurb about us so you know who I am and my background. I've got a small business based in Washington, D.C. We're right downtown, and we provide services for companies that are selling to the federal government. If you're an aspiring government contractor, we would direct you to the PTAC. If you're more of an established firm that has some that's generating revenue and you're selling products, services, or software, we can most likely help you. List of our services is on our website, which is just my name. It's going to be jenniferschaus.com. Those services do include anything from proposal writing to compliance and contract administration. GSA schedules are really the forefront of our offering. And there's a whole host of other services. The last bullet here says that we have 400 plus complimentary webinars on federal contracting. You can find those on our website and our YouTube channel. Those are offered throughout the year. The archives obviously include the 400 plus. I think we're actually up to 450. And the way we have them organized on our website is by topic. So if you're really just focused on GSA schedules, I think we have maybe 30 different webinars that you can download. Again, they're all free. The PowerPoints are complimentary as well. So if you feel that you missed something today, this program will eventually get uploaded there too. Okay. I'm going to move to the next slide here. And some of the complimentary webinar services and series that we provide include what we did last year. I'm going to start from the bottom and go up here. Is in 2020, we covered every part of the FAR. The FAR is the Federal Acquisition Regulations, which is the rule book on how the government can purchase. So when do they need to go out for bid? When can they use a GSA schedule? When should they be setting something aside for small, women-owned, veteran-owned, hub zone, and all the other check boxes? There's 52 parts of the FAR. You don't need to know everything about every part, but you should have a general understanding. And there's 52 weeks in the year. So what we did was cover each part once a week. Same thing with the DFARS. This is for the rule book that DoD uses for when they go to purchase something. So again, it's the rules and regulations. We go sequentially through those. We started at the beginning of the year. Again, 52 parts more or less, and 52 weeks in the year. So I think we're now on I think we're in the high 20s. Those are every Wednesday. They're complimentary. The links are there, the recordings, the PowerPoints, etc. We also have, it's a Friday, second Friday of every month. It's a monthly series. We have 4 panelists. Usually a government contracts attorney is one of the panelists. So you're kind of getting, I'll say, quote unquote, free legal advice. And we cover the various topics. So this is just the schedule for the remainder of the year. Again, second Friday of every month, 4 panelists. There is a $35 registration fee. If you use the discount code VAPTAC, that'll drop your registration fee to $20. So you get a $15 discount. Okay, so today we're talking about GSA schedules. This is the agenda as far as how we're going to flow through today's program. I'll give you an overview, just the basics, the process, the various components of the proposal, which will be the administrative, the pricing, and the technical sections. We'll talk about timelines on kind of how GSA operates, and then best practices for once you have the schedule. And it looks like we've got a question here. Let me just see here. So someone I think is having problems with their audio. You may just want to log out and try to log back in. Let me type my answer here since the person cannot hear. Bear with me 1 second. Try to log out. Okay. Okay, and let's continue. I think that was the only person that had audio issues. Edna, I'm assuming that you can hear me and the others can as well. So that's our agenda, and we'll start at the top here. So a little bit about GSA, General Services Administration. They are a non-appropriated agency, and what that means is they are not funded through taxpayer dollars. So they are funded through the actual schedule holders, as well as well, more specifically, they're funded through the agencies that purchase through the schedule. GSA is divided into 2 main sections. PBS is the public building services. So anyone that's in architecture, engineering, construction, any of those type of services that deal with buildings. GSA is, I'll say, the largest landlord in the DC area for the federal government. So if you think of all the federal government buildings, national parks, the National Mall, anything along those lines, GSA PBS handles that. And then you've got the contracts, which is more or less GSA schedules. And GSA is also behind the public websites. So betasam.gov, if anybody in the past has gone to FPDS, USA Spending, GSA they're the data people and the organizers of those websites. But today we're talking about the schedule. So the GSA schedule is a contract vehicle, meaning it's a mechanism for the government to purchase from you directly. You can say that it's perceived as a marketing tool, and it is. It makes you a little bit more credible. It makes you attractive to the buyer because there's less paperwork for them to have to go through in order to get to you. So it makes it easier for them to do their job. You've been vetted, your prices have been negotiated. They know that you've got the past performance to perform on any of the RFPs that they put out. So again, you've been vetted, you've jumped through all the hoops up front. But please note that the GSA schedule is absolutely not required to do business with the government. It's one of many, many tools that you have, and it's also one of many options for the government to purchase from you. You can also say it's a ticket to the dance, but you're still going to need to find a partner. And also refer to it as a vendor shortlist. So I'm sure anyone on this call has gone on to Amazon or eBay or any online marketplace, and you type in whatever it is you're looking for, whether it's sandals for the summer, or in the government's case, bulletproof vest, or ammunition, or Xerox paper, or data migration services, cloud hosting, cybersecurity services. And then you get a list of vendors that will provide those services, just like you would on Amazon. And that's really all the GSA schedule is a way to limit competition, simplify the list of vendors that can provide those products, services, or software, and just have a smaller pool of respondents. So very similar to seeing an RFP on betasam.gov, the GSA schedule is really just a smaller subset of that. It's really only used about 10 to 15% of the time in federal purchases, so that represents a very, very small percentage. However, the dollar amount is still going to be large, roughly a couple $2 billion. State and local governments do have the option to purchase off of GSA schedules, as do some of the, I'll say, quasi-government entities. And let me just caveat the state and local government. There are specific state and local governments that will grandfather in your GSA schedule catalog or your pricing. There are certainly hoops that you're going to have to jump through and paperwork to fill out. It's not that you just check a box and say, hey, here's our GSA schedule number. There's still a process involved. The United Nations, the World Bank, the IMF, the IFC, the Red Cross, they also have the ability to purchase off of the schedule. So if anybody's diversifying their customer base and selling into those verticals, then you can certainly leverage your schedule. There's roughly about 18 to 20,000 vendors that hold a GSA schedule, and more than half of them have zero sales through their schedule. Why do I bring that up, and what does that mean? It means somebody either sold them a schedule that they didn't need, or they had the build it and they will come strategy, which really isn't a strategy, and they haven't really done their homework to understand who is their ideal customer and how does the ideal customer purchase. The schedule is primarily based on your lowest prices. I hate to be one to read from the slides, but this is probably the most important thing about the schedule. It's 99%. The impetus of the schedule is 99% based on your pricing, but more specifically, your lowest prices. There's also going to be price restrictions post-award. So once you're on that schedule, there are going to be certain things that you can and cannot do that will limit your pricing. And pricing is where you find your profitability and ability to stay afloat and pay your bills. We'll talk about those in more detail. So the schedule can be used by all of the federal government departments and agencies, and so it kind of makes it a carte blanche. Now there are certain agencies and departments that have also built their own schedules. So for example, you have Navy Seaport E and NASA SOUP, and HHS has their own contract vehicle, and OPM has their own contract vehicle. So Just keep in mind that GSA, again, is one of many, many ways that the government can purchase from you. So you need to do some homework to find out who is your ideal customer, and do they prefer GSA or do they prefer their own agency contract vehicle. Makes it easier for the government to purchase from you because, again, you've been vetted up front. Your pricing has been pre-negotiated and established, and your pricing, again, will be your lowest prices, so the government knows that they're getting the best deal. And if they come to you directly, they're probably not going to get anything better because, again, it's been negotiated up front. Okay, so as we kind of try to tie this back to the title of today, what's in it for you? So again, it makes the competition pool a little bit smaller, more refined, but smaller, meaning that you're then only going to be competing with other companies that are on the schedule within your specific special item number, which is a number that further identifies what your product, service, or software is. Also, by having this schedule, it does show that you are a serious contender in government contracting, that you were able to at least read the GSA solicitation, respond to it, and get the award. With that, I think it does show that you are someone that does deserve some respect. But again, there are no guarantees. You want to make sure that you're not getting the schedule just for the sake of getting the schedule. You should be getting it to more or less reverse engineer your way into your ideal customers' pockets. You will get additional exposure in a marketing sense, meaning that GSA does a great job of marketing itself, meaning marketing itself to government agencies and saying, hey, you should purchase from the schedule because we simplify the procurement process, and here are the vendors. Pre-COVID, GSA did host some region by region trade shows, and those can also be helpful for vendors. So vendors would set up tabletops just like you would at any conference show, and then the government would come in and go around to the various tables to visit the vendors to build relationships and find services, products, and software that they were looking for. Once you're on the schedule, GSA does then send out specific RFPs, RFQs, and RFIs to the vendors within that specific special item number. So if you are providing IT professional services, the special item number within GSA for that is 54151S. And so all of the vendors within that special item number who are on the schedule would then start receiving notifications from the government as they are trying to purchase IT professional services. Now, this is going to be a similar model to what you have seen on betasam.gov, where you see the other RFPs. Anybody for GSA, anybody within that special item number is going to be able to see and respond to that RFP. Not everybody will, but keep in mind that very similar to betasam.gov, these have more or less been worked and are wired, meaning that somebody has been into the government site, built a relationship with somebody on the inside in a program manager capacity. Somebody at that level has talked to the contracting officer to have this set aside or set as a GSA schedule procurement, and now you're seeing the RFP. So as you read the RFP or RFQ in Gsa eBuy, which is the portal that they use, and you say, wow, I think this was written just for me, and you have no idea who the contracting officer is, the program manager is, and you've never had a conversation, then same as betasam.gov, you're a little bit too late to the party. Does that mean that you should not respond? Well, it depends. You probably should have an internal matrix that gives you a go or no-go decision and some sort of score related to that. So that would be incumbent upon you internally to have that process in place and make that decision. But keep that in mind that, again, you really still need to build relationships with the government for your specific product or service, and then have that pushed into the GSA portal. again, through relationships is how that happens, to have a smaller vendor pool that you're competing against. Okay, so now we're going to talk about just the process of getting onto the schedule, which is usually why people are signing up for the class, this class. So you really want to do homework, and this market is so unique that there are so many websites, publicly available websites, meaning they are absolutely free as long as you've got an internet connection, where you can go and conduct market research. Who are your customers? Are they purchasing through set-asides? Are they purchasing through the GSA schedule? If so, how big is that market? How much has been spent for your specific services through GSA schedules? What's been set aside for 8A women-owned hub zone and all the rest? What's gone out for full and open competition? What's gone through OTAs? What's gone through simplified acquisition? What's gone sole source? And then kind of pick your poison that way. If most of the contracts are going to 8A businesses within your industry, at, let's just say, HHS, maybe that's your target department, and you're not 8A, then maybe you want to find somebody that is 8A and form a partnership, a joint venture, a teaming, subcontracting agreement, mentor protege, whatever it is. So use the data that's out there. There are companies that provide data aggregation services. So they will basically go out to all of these websites for you, compile the data, and then let you run reports and keep you abreast of upcoming sources sought, RFIs, RFQs, RFPs, and everything else. So again, use the data that's out there to be strategic and let the data drive your path forward as far as what departments you want to go to and where you should be selling and how you should be selling. So I mentioned a couple ways that the government purchases, GSA schedule obviously being one of them. I gave you guys a number earlier on one of the slides that said GSA schedules are used about 10 to 15% of the time. I just grabbed a kind of a middle number there and threw in the 12%. But I'll go down the list here, and this is obviously going to vary. So if you're selling landscaping services, these numbers are going to be different. If you're selling IT professional services, these percentages will be different. Same thing for whatever it is your product, service, or software is. This is just, these numbers represent, generally speaking, some rough averages. So full and open competition, these are going to be the RFPs that you see on betasam.gov. Department and agency vehicles, this is going to represent roughly the aggregate of the Navy Seaport E, NASA SOUP, HHS's contract vehicle, State Department's contract vehicle, OPM's contract vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. Then you've got the GSA schedule in there. Set-asides, this will be your women-owned hub zone 8A, the Alaska Natives, and all of the other checkboxes. Simplified acquisitions, these are going to be the small business set-asides that fall within the simplified acquisition threshold. Sole source, meaning that there's only one provider on the planet that provides that specific solution. OTAs, this number actually may be a little bit higher. OTAs have gained popularity over the last, I'll say, 2 years, although they've been in existence for many, many years. There are only specific departments that can use OTAs. DOD, HHS, Department of Energy, but they're gaining traction. We've done some webinars on those, so feel free to download those if you're not familiar with them. They are non-FAR purchases, meaning they don't follow that rule book that we talked about in the beginning. So you've got a little bit of leeway there, but again, it's for specific types of solutions, and again, only used by specific departments for that reason. So keep in mind that GSA is one of many, many options, so don't put all your eggs in one basket and go down a very narrow hallway to then end up as one of the 60% of the companies on the schedule that have zero sales through the schedule. So again, we talked about the process of doing your homework and market research, and you also, in that homework process, want to understand before you get onto the schedule, are your prices even competitive with the others on the schedule? And this is the most important part, again, of the schedule, but it's also the most important part, perhaps even of your homework. So if you're trying to do some due diligence and looking at competitive analysis, if you're selling products, you want to go to the gsaadvantage.gov site, and that will also be a good stopping point for anyone with who's providing software. Now, if you're providing services, there's another site called calc.gsa.gov, and I'm going to show you some screenshots in a second. The reason it's important to do this homework on your pricing is because let's just say you are providing widgets for $100, or you've got somebody that's billed at $100 per hour, and the average GSA price for the widget or that hourly widget is, again, GSA average, let's say, is $85. Once you get to the process with GSA, after you have submitted your proposal to them, and GSA gets to the point where they start looking at your prices and they take you down the path of the price negotiations, they're going to say, hey, we did our homework and we see that the GSA average price for these widgets is $85 and you're offering us $100. Why should we let you onto the schedule at $100 per hour when we can buy the widget or the hourly rate at $85 from 700 other vendors? And if you're not willing to go down to that price, then basically they're going to say adios. So you really don't want to waste the time and money trying to get onto the schedule until you have done this comparison. Now, your rates may be higher because, and again, this is comparing apples to apples. So if the hourly rate dictates that person should have a master's degree and 15 years of experience, then that's the research that you'll conduct. And I'll show you in a second what that looks like. Or if your widget glows in the dark and that's why it's the $100 versus the $85, then you need to be very specific about these value added components of your product or specific certifications that the labor category has. So this is a screenshot. We did a search on a project manager, which is just a very general term that hopefully most people can relate to and maybe even have on their price list. And we typed in, this is from the calc.gsa.gov site. We typed in project manager. On the right-hand side is where you see the additional filters. So this is where I was saying you want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. So that educational level, we've got bachelor's degree and minimum of 5 years of experience. And that's where we came up with the GSA site then comes up with the $140 average. Now, if your rate for your project manager is that you're proposing to GSA is $200 per hour, GSA will most likely negotiate you down to the $140 unless you can say, that your project manager also requires, some other skill set or there's something so unique that dictates that higher price. So again, please do this before you decide to get onto the schedule. It will save you time, effort, and money. It'll make you more competitive, or it might make you realize that the schedule is not going to be an asset for you, that it'll be more of a liability. Now this screen here is just, because we couldn't fit everything on one page, just the lower half of the calc.gsa.gov site. So again, it just shows you the average price, and then as you scroll down, you'll see the labor category and the vendor's information. And there's going to be, I'm sure it shows us somewhere how many vendors have this project manager title, which I think was 1,388 results. That show, again, the bachelor's degree, 5 years of experience. So you can just see that first one there, the Gsa Contracting. And then you can export that into Excel and do all sorts of fun analysis with it. But again, make sure you're comparing apples to apples, and this is just further down the list here. And you can sort this by education, you can sort it by numbers of years experience, but it's easier, in my opinion, to toss that over into an Excel spreadsheet and then really dig into your analysis to find out, is this schedule going to work for us, or is it going to put us out of business because our prices are going to end up being too low? The other kind of red flag here that I'm not sure I noted or said is that your GSA prices are only a price ceiling or a not to exceed rate. So once GSA has negotiated you down to these very low rates, then you're on the schedule. As you start bidding for work through the schedule, you're going to be encouraged to give rates that are lower than your GSA schedule rate. So if your GSA schedule rate is, let's say, that 140 for the project manager, as you start bidding for work, you're probably coming in at, I don't know, 138, 137, depending upon, you know, how big the order is and the just the margins that you think you can make. So keep that in mind, that your GSA rate is a price ceiling or a not to exceed rate. So as we continue to talk about the homework, you want to make sure that that you do meet the upfront qualifications, and that you are also then able post-award to meet the qualifications as well, meaning that you will meet a $25,000 sales quota per year. The first year you're on the schedule is really a grace period, but $25,000 is the magic number to hit through your schedule. And sorry, that was kind of a little bit off on a tangent and not written there on the slide. But again, you want to make sure that you meet or exceed the solicitation requirements. And that solicitation, it's an RFP that you're going to find on the betasam.gov site. You can also find it on the gsa.gov site. And GSA went through some consolidations over the last couple of years. And the biggest one was most recently last year. So they consolidated these disparate schedules under GSA, and now everybody is on the GSA schedule, and your differentiator are these special item numbers. And again, those special item numbers are numbers that further identify what your product or your service is. So because it is an RFP, it is occasionally updated with new terms and conditions or requirements, or new hoops that you have to jump through, or new forms that you have to complete. So make sure that this is a common mistake that vendors will make if they do it themselves, meaning that they're trying to get onto the schedule internally without any outside assistance, is that they will download the solicitation, let's say in January as part of the New Year plan. They start completing it. And then, I don't know, let's say they get busy with federal work or just other hunting that they're working on. And then 6 months later, it's June or July, and they go back to the solicitation and start responding to it, but haven't paid attention perhaps to the fact that GSA has made an update. So while they may be working on refresh 2, GSA is now on refresh 6. So if you're submitting documentation to GSA that's based on an old refresh or update number, your proposal to GSA will not be compliant, and most of the time you basically will be rejected. So again, make sure you're keeping up with this refresh number that GSA puts out. Also, just because you meet the requirements to get onto the schedule doesn't mean that you should. Again, you really want to make sure that your customers or your prospects prefer to use the schedule. Sometimes they don't. Again, they have their own agency-wide contract vehicles. They may have another mechanism for purchasing. So just, again, make sure that that is the preferred method, or that you're able to build a relationship and steer them towards the schedule. As you're putting together the proposal, like whether it's the GSA solicitation or any other solicitation, you want to map out your timeline, a compliance matrix. Make sure you've got some sort of QC process in place, and that can be both internal and or external, meaning that you have a fresh set of eyes to take a look at the proposal, making sure that you've dotted all the I's, crossed the T's, that again, you're kind of circling back and looking at that refresh number to ensure that you are responding to the correct solicitation. And then the submission, I'd give yourself a good day or two here, just because it is an online portal that you'll need to go to. And it is a lot of cutting and pasting, but you just want to make sure that you haven't missed anything. And if you're staring at that screen for a couple hours, you probably want to take a step back and then look at it again with fresh eyes. So that's why I think the quality control process, even if your company decides to do this internally, that I think having a fresh set of eyes look at everything can behoove you and be very beneficial to the process. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the actual proposal components. Let me just take a sip of coffee here, and if anybody has any questions, again, please type them in. I'm not going to read off your name, so everything's anonymous, and there are no stupid questions. And again, we will send out the recording as well as the PowerPoint slides. It looks like no questions, so hopefully everybody is still awake and drinking their coffee as well. Okay, so the proposal components, the three main ones are the administrative, the technical, and the pricing. And these are just the three main sections of any proposal. So we're going to talk about the administrative first, and this is what goes into the GSA proposal. You'll need to include your last 2 years balance sheet and income statement. Sometimes GSA will follow up with a SF, which stands for Standard Form 527. This will go to your bank. If your company bank is Bank of America, there are some special hoops that they will need to jump through. You'll also need to fill out an internal company form that has your balance sheet and income statement as well. So that usually happens, this SF 527, after your proposal is submitted. So just make sure that you have that ready. You can Google for that. I'm not sure you're actually going to find that on the GSA website, but we always have our clients have that ready to go. There are 2 tests that should also be taken, and these need to be completed within a 12-month period. So if you decide to download the GSA proposal today and then you end up not submitting it until, let's say, August of 2022, then your readiness assessment and pathway to success will need to be completed. So again, make sure that those have a heartbeat of within a 12-month period of when you're submitting your proposal. These 2 tests can be found on what's called the Vendor Support Center, or VSC. Again, vendorsupportcenter.gsa.gov. Got the website listed there. The readiness assessment, give yourself, let's say, 45 minutes to an hour. There is a little bit of a homework process or a couple questions that you'll need to do some research on to complete that assessment. The pathway to success, you should be able to get through that in about 30 to 45 minutes as well. And at the end of the pathway to success, you'll have a certificate that'll have a date on it. Again, make sure that the dates on these are within a year of your submission date of the entire proposal. Additional components here to the administrative section include your SAM record. You want to make sure that it's current, that you accept credit cards, that you've got the right NAICS code that match over to your SIN number. You also want to include your tax ID number and your DUNS number. If you're using any outside consultants like us, you want to make sure that you have the proper documentation for them to negotiate with the government and submit the proposal on your behalf. That's the authorized negotiator form. Also, anyone else internally that you have within your company, usually a finance person, C-level execs, should be authorized on the contract. That just means that they're able to go in and talk to the government, make modifications, etc. If your company has had any previous schedules, current schedules, something that's been rejected, schedules that have been canceled for no sales or perhaps any other reasons, you need to make a note of those. You want to include any rejection letters, dates, and schedules that you were on from the past, start date, end date, etc. So I believe that will then, wrap up the administrative section. And that's usually the section that should take you the least amount of time. So if you're kind of doing it yourself, or kind of doing this on the evenings and weekends internally. Give yourself maybe a week or two to get through that administrative section. The technical section, a little bit of a heavier lift, but nothing impossible. And let me just stop here as I've got a question. Maybe it relates to the... Yes, the session is recorded. You guys will get all the PowerPoint slides and the recording. You can also, I've done this class in the past, so you can find it on our website under the events section, even though it's not live. The same PowerPoint and the recording are on our website if you're in a big hurry for it. And let me just read this next question. I've been told that if you do not use a company like yours that specializes in putting together the proposal for the GSA schedule, GSA does not really accept your proposal. GSA makes it difficult. Is that true? No, not necessarily. You can do it yourself. You can use consultants. You can use attorneys. You can use accountants. GSA, their main focus is ensuring that it's compliant. So some folks on the GSA side think that you should be able to do this with one arm tied behind your back and one eye closed, and that you shouldn't be using consultants or attorneys or accountants to help you with this. And then sometimes they have the opposite view. So it really just depends on who you get. But if you submit a compliant proposal, then that's really the most important thing, that you've submitted all of the proper documentation, that you've done the homework on the pricing, and that you're not offering something outrageous, that everything is within the scope, that you've got the past performance, and there aren't any red flags. So hopefully that answers your question. What if you do not accept credit cards? So that's, as I mentioned in SAM, you need to check the box in your sam.gov profile that says that you do accept credit cards. If you don't, I think there are companies like Stripe or PayPal that you should be able to have integrated within your accounting system that will then allow you to accept credit cards, but that is going to be part of the terms and conditions. Question about the recording. Again, that's on our website. I'm just going through these questions in the order that they came in. Can the principal's past performance be considered the firm's past performance? We're going to get into past performance in just a moment. So let's talk here. We've covered the administrative section. Now we're going to go on to the technical. And let me just see another question. Will I discuss TDR, transactional data reporting? Yes, we'll get into post-award requirements as well. So we're just talking right now about, we've got 2 hours together, so we still have an hour and I think 15 minutes to go. So this is the proposal. The second component is the technical section. First is a corporate narrative, and now there are specific questions that GSA will want you to answer for the corporate narrative. It includes questions that are going to be about, how long has your company been in business? How many full-time employees do you have? And this is not including your 1099s or any B2B corp-to-corp transactions. These are your full-time W-2s. And then they're going to have some other questions in there as well. So answer all of those questions. It's a cut and paste. I also highly recommend then having those questions and your answers saved as a PDF and uploaded into the GSA e-offer system after you've done the cut and paste, just as a kind of a backup. Same thing here with the quality control, about 6 to 7 questions that GSA will want you to answer, ensuring that your company is able to handle multiple projects without sacrificing quality. They will want to know who your quality control manager is, that person's name. Again, answer all the questions. It's a cut and paste for each question. So it's, somewhat time consuming, but not anything impossible or challenging. Again, save your questions and the answers also as a PDF and upload that into the system. There was a company in the past, for anyone that has kind of gone down this path, this GSA path previously, and Open Ratings would survey some of your customers that you provided, and they would ask them questions about your quality, your pricing, your customer service, and then they would rate you. And then that report would then get included in your proposal. Open ratings now no longer exist. So you basically will list 3 to 5 references, customer references. I suggest erring on the high side and giving them 5. And these will be customers that have worked with you in the past when you have provided the services that you're proposing to GSA, or you've sold these products to these customers, the same products that you're trying to sell to GSA or get on that GSA list. And there are specific data points that you will want to list here that are required. It's in the solicitation. You can find that if you download the solicitation. Again, that one is a cut and paste. I also highly recommend saving that as a Word document or preferably a PDF and uploading that into the upload section of the GSA eOffer website. You'll also then have project narratives with a statement of work, or more specifically, the contract. And the number of project narratives that you provide is going to differ or vary based on the special item numbers that you're pursuing. So anyone that's going after any of the IT services, you're going to have at least 2 project narratives. There's timelines on those. You can read those in the solicitation. And again here, make sure that the narratives also have a copy of the contract and fall within the time period that GSA requires. We've got a quick question here. Okay, I resell dental equipment and supplies. I have reviewed Federal Procurement Data System in the past, and I do not see KOs using Gsa Schedules to purchase goods. Is there another site I should research to determine if Gsa is a good procurement vehicle? So there is another site, and as you go through the Gsa Readiness Assessment, they're going to ask you to do some research, and they're going to give you this site, which is ssq.gsa.gov, and SSQ stands for Schedule Sales Query, and it will let you get very detailed information on the GSA schedule SIN numbers. So I would navigate for this particular company or person that's looking for dental equipment. There's going to be a special item number for dental equipment. What I would do is go there, look at the vendors, how much revenue are they doing through the schedule, who are the buyers. That's probably going to be usual suspects like the VA, possibly prisons, HHS, probably some components of DOD, maybe even Department of Agriculture. But you should have a number. Everybody should know how big is the market for your specific special item number for your specific product, service, or software within GSA. If you're just going down the path of getting a schedule and you don't know that number, I think that is a little bit naive. You should really know who the competition is, what's the makeup, how many large businesses are in your special item number, how many small, what does it look like, what do they look like as far as, are they primarily 8A, women-owned, veteran-owned, hub zone? How are you going to stack up against the competition? And what's the big prize? Is it, within your special item number, is there $50 billion worth of contracts, or is it 500,000? Do the math, do the homework. It's going to take, not a ton of time, but I think it's a very wise investment versus just throwing something up against the wall, meaning let's get the GSA schedule and see if it sticks. That's, again, a very not proactive way to attack the market. So, next question is, if our company is a sub to a prime, can the prime serve as a reference? Yes. So when you are completing the references, let's say the end customer is Department of Homeland Security, DHS, the prime is Lockheed Martin, and you're a sub to Lockheed. So you would list in your narrative exactly that. The end user is DHS, we're a sub to Lockheed Martin. But because that would be considered a B2B, business to business transaction, your point of contact should be the Lockheed person. If you want to include the DHS person as well, you certainly can. Okay. Next question is, if you are a smaller check map, you and perform in multiple areas, do they tend to frown upon companies who are structured that way? I'm not sure I understand the question here. Smaller check map. And performing in multiple areas. If this person wants to rephrase the question, I'm not sure I understand the question. GSA doesn't matter if you're large or small. Again, their goal is to ensure that you've got a compliant proposal, that you've got customers that are going to buy from you through the schedule. You've got a marketing plan in place, and so forth. So it doesn't matter if you're large or small. Okay, so we talked about the administrative, we talked about the technical. The technical, I'd give yourself maybe, this is maybe more like 2 to 3 weeks, particularly if you're doing it yourself. The narratives are going to take a little bit of time to write. There are specific questions that you'll have to answer for the narrative section. That's going to be a cut and paste in the GSA portal. As you guys can probably guess, I'm going to highly encourage you to also take those questions along with a copy of the contract and save that as a PDF and upload that into the section that you can also, so basically you're just doing kind of a carbon copy, mirroring what you copied and pasted into the copy and paste section. Okay, so about 2 to 3 weeks here for the technical, 1 to 2 for that administrative. Now, for anyone that's providing products, and there was the question from the dental product company, if you are not the manufacturer, then you will need a letter of supply from each of the manufacturers. This is a GSA form. You can find it in the solicitation. You also want to make sure that you are compliant with the TAA, the Trade Agreement Acts, ensuring that your products are not being manufactured in China, Argentina, Iran, and a couple other countries that are on that list. You also want to make sure that you are monitoring the TAA list because it will change through various, let's say, cycles of politics, depending upon who we kind of have agreements with. Also, you want to be cognizant of Ability 1. This is ensuring that your products are not being made by Unicor. Unicor is, we'll say, a division of Department of Justice, the prison system, so where the prisoners are making license plate holders and certain uniforms. If you are also providing license plate holders and uniforms, then you cannot provide those products through the schedule. You can still sell directly to the government. However, getting those products onto the schedule is not going to be permitted. And again, Ability 1, just like TAA, is a living, breathing entity, meaning that products will go on and off of there, countries will go on and off of TAA, so you want to make sure that you are compliant and have a system in place to monitor that. And then just real quick, back to that letter of supply. This is something you should also take care of before you decide to go down the path of getting the schedule. The worst thing to do is have all of these other sections completed for the proposal, and then one of your manufacturers says, hey, we don't want to sign this letter from GSA. We don't agree with the language in there. Well, that's going to be a deal breaker because that letter of supply is required. So make sure that you talk to your suppliers, manufacturers up front, that they're comfortable with the language, that they're able to sign off on everything that's in there. Again, a lot of this is really just doing the homework up front to make sure this is in your best interest. And there's no real cookie cutter answer for every company. It's going to be specific to your own internal business plan, who your target audience is, the relationships that you have within the government, their preferred contract vehicles to use, etc. For anyone providing professional services, so if you've got labor categories, if you've got the program managers and the IT systems engineer and or carpenters or HVAC folks, You're going to need to supply your human resources plan. GSA is looking for two things there. Number one is how you pay overtime, which should be in accordance with federal regulations, meaning that you're paying time and a half. And they're also looking at compensation, meaning how and when you pay your employees. And that wraps up the technical section. Now, the person that asked the question, something about if he or she wants to rephrase the question, I'm happy to try again to answer it. So, which was something about a check map, which I'm not sure I understand what that is. So feel free to rephrase, and I will try to answer the question again. Okay, so now we're going to talk about pricing, which again is the biggest, the bulk of the schedule, the bulk of why GSA has created this, the bulk of what you should be paying attention to, what can put you out of business or really keep you afloat. So when the government's buying from you, specifically through this GSA schedule that you have, let's just assume you've been awarded, they know that you have jumped through all these hoops, that you've got the past performance for the specific SIN number that you are listed under, that you've been checked out, your financials are good, you're a healthy company, your financial ratios look good, your prices have been pre-negotiated, meaning that they looked both internally at any discounts that you've given to customers, to your customers, but then they've also matched your pricing up against other competitors on the schedule. And they know that if they go to make a purchase from you through the schedule, that they're getting your lowest prices. But again, keep in mind your GSA rates are still only a price ceiling. So for any of the folks on the line that are providing labor categories, meaning professional services or product companies, you're going to have a pricing matrix. And first, you'll have a list, your commercial price list, so a list of your labor categories, the minimum education, the minimum years of experience, the job description, and then the hourly rate. If it's products, you probably have a SKU number or some sort of product number, a description, and then a price for that. If you are providing a commercial price list, or if your company uses market rates, meaning that your prices fluctuate just based on we'll say circumstances, that you're not always selling your project manager at a rate of $100.80. That would be, market rates, that your rates fluctuate based on who the customer is and the highest rate that you think you can get. So you kind of have two options there. You either have a commercial price list or you use market rates. And based on that, based on whichever path your company has taken, there is something called the economic price adjustment. And this is so much easier in person with a blackboard, but your economic price adjustment refers to how your GSA prices will be increased after you're on the schedule for 12 months. So if you have a commercial price list, meaning it's a published list, and this is typical for companies that have products. You're buying a vacuum cleaner, the price is X. Or you're buying a bulletproof vest, the price is Y. Sometimes labor rates will fluctuate again just based on market conditions. So if you do have a commercial price list, then at the end of the 12 months with GSA, you are then able to go in and make a modification to update your commercial prices and say, GSA, our commercial prices went up by, let's say, 5%. Now we also want to increase our GSA rates by 5%. Now, they may not give you 5%, but that's how that process would work. Again, that's called your economic price adjustment. Now, for companies that are using market rates, and I'm just here on the second line talking about price lists. If you're using market rates, then you can use this is for labor companies. Department of Labor has a Table 5 index. So these are government figures that they will publish. It's publicly available. And typically what companies will do is take an average of the last 3 periods And sometimes that average is going to be around, let's say, somewhere in the 1.8% up to maybe 2.9% is probably the best you're going to get. And you can basically build out your labor rates for the full 20 years, which is the schedule lifeline. So sometimes if you're doing some homework on the GSA Advantage website, or you're looking at somebody's price catalog on GSA, you may see that companies will have the rates built out with some sort of percent increase for a 20-year period. And other companies just show their rates for one year. So the ones that have built out for 20 years are using the Department of Labor, most likely, Table 5 Index, or some other economic indicator to negotiate with GSA to build that out. The benefit there is it saves you some time and money, meaning at the end of every 12 months of your GSA schedule contract, you then do not have to go in and make a modification because your rates are already built out. However, using the downside can be is that the DOL Table 5 numbers usually are going to be a little bit small, like lower percentage. So if you don't mind taking the time to go down the path of having a commercial price list, and don't mind making a modification at the end of every 12 years for your GSA schedule, you could probably get a little bit higher than the 1.9 to 2.8% that I mentioned. That is usually where the Department of Labor Table 5 average falls. So it's more of an administrative burden to go in and do that 12-month modification, but you'll probably get a higher rate. And that's again on that economic price adjustment. So this is one of the components of the pricing. You'll have to indicate what your EPA is and either bill that out if you're going with market rates, or if you have a commercial price list, then you're basically just stating that, hey, these are our rates, and we'll circle back with you GSA in 12 months. And I apologize, I wish I had a better visual to give you guys on this with a whiteboard or something, but happy to answer any questions on that. So let me just move on here, staying on this slide, but just going to the third row here, which is that you will need ample backup documentation for the pricing, as you will for the other sections as well, as I stated. So you'll need an invoice for any of the line items that you're proposing. So if you're proposing vacuum cleaners, then you'll need an invoice to show that you've sold the vacuum cleaner. If you're proposing a project manager level 1, level 2, and level 3, you'll need 3 invoices, one for the project manager level 1, one for the project manager level 2, and one for the project manager level 3. You're then going to put everything into the GSA approved price proposal template, which is found on the GSA solicitation. There's a bunch of columns in there that indicate your what the item or the service is, the commercial price list, so the commercial price or your market rates, the invoice number that you've got for that item or that service, the rate that your most favored customer gets, and then the rate that you're going to propose to GSA. Also highly suggest submitting a competitive analysis. So that's pulling out 3 competitors for each of the line items that you're proposing to GSA and showing that your rates are competitive with the other companies on the schedule, providing the same product or service. And again, comparing apples to apples. So if your rate is $200 and that rate is because the labor category dictates a master's degree and 20 years of experience, then make sure that you're pulling in other companies that also require that project manager, whatever that labor category is, with 20 years of experience and a master's degree. The other document that goes into this pricing section is the Commercial Sales Practice Form, typically referred to as the CSP-1. This is going to ask you for a couple different data points. One is going to be your last fiscal year sales, which is repetitive to the financial statements that you provided. It's going to ask for your proposed sales through the GSA schedule. If you're offering multiple SIN numbers, that proposed sales number will be separate for each SIN number. You typically want to put something that's higher than $25,000 per year, which again is that GSA sales quota. If you put in a crazy high number and you don't meet that number, that's fine. You're not going to get dinged. You just need to bring in $25K through your schedule. Nobody should be getting onto the schedule simply to provide $25,000. You should really be shooting for the stars and knowing how big the market is for your specific SIN. So looking at maybe the last 3 fiscal years for your SIN number and making some estimates off of that based on where you've got relationships and what's in your pipeline. You'll also need to prepare a statement about your pricing and how it is fair and reasonable, and I would suggest tying that back to your competitive analysis. Okay, that CSP form also is going to ask you for your internal pricing policies, and 2 pieces here of your pricing policies are going to be your standard discount. So your standard discounts, for example, could be that we always give a 10% discount to nonprofits and associations. So it doesn't matter if it's, you know, who or what the nonprofit or association is. Anytime we deal with that type of legal structure, we always give a 10% discount. GSA will want something that's equal to your standard discounts. Now, if you have any non-standard discounts, this would be maybe the business started 3 years ago and the first 6 months of that entity's being in existence, you guys were just giving spot discounts here and there that were, 15%, 30%, maybe even 50%. So crazy discounts, but simply just to win the business. So that's where you would state that your discounts were for these specific categories of customers or names of customers, that these were non-standard. This is not part of our standard policy and procedures, or they are not standard discounts that we currently give. And this is a good tool to be strategic. You would just need to ensure that that you do have documentation to show that you are not giving these very high discounts to customers on an ongoing basis, or that these customers that are getting these crazy high discounts from you do not make up a large percentage of your business. So keep that in mind. This is just a little bit, I think, better visual. So your standard discounts, these are, again, normal policy. Anytime we deal with nonprofits, they get 10%. Non-standard discounts, and GSA will want your standard discounts, anything there on the left, that's just part of your day-to-day operations. Non-standard is, oh, hey, Coca-Cola called us today. Well, Coca-Cola is probably not calling you every day, and they want, X amount of widgets from us, or they want 100 project managers from us. And it's, in order to win that business, you decide to discount your rates by, let's just say, 30%. That would be considered a non-standard discount. It was one time simply to win the business. This is not something that we normally do. It was to get a flagship customer and build a relationship. So again, all of these are going to require documentation and invoices to show that it's not part of your standard practice, because if it was part of your standard practice, then GSA is going to say, hey, we want that same discount. So if you find as you're looking back through your invoices that you've given some great meaning, probably not good for your bottom line, but good for company growth, those type of discounts, you should be able to find creative ways to list them as non-standard discounts. Again, GSA will want something that's equal to or better than your most favorite customer, and those are your standard discounts. Again, part of your everyday average practice. And is it bad? Got a question here. Is it bad if you have not given any discounts? No, that's fine. It's probably the easiest type of proposal for us to put together, and probably easiest for you. So your pricing is always steady, that you have not wavered off of the $100.02 for the project manager and $157.36 for the project manager level 2. So no, then you would basically just take the next step and go on and do your research to ensure that your prices, whatever you're going to offer GSA, probably something a little bit lower than those rates, is compatible and competitive with the other schedule holders. And hopefully that answered your question. Okay, so this is just kind of recapping that GSA conducts 2 litmus tests. One is going to be your internal pricing discounts. So again, that's your standard discounts who have you know, what category of customers, whether it's all nonprofits or ABC company always receives a 10% discount because, you know, they also help us with our website or something. So GSA will again look at your standard discounts and want something that's comparable to those. And then the other is looking at the external pricing, meaning the other schedule holders. And there's that calc site, and ensuring that your rates are competitive with theirs. And this will come up in the negotiations. So you want to make sure that you've got that backup documentation if GSA is trying to push you down towards, you know, giving them 12% discount when you really only wanted to give them a 2% discount. You can then say, hey, we've got 3 companies here that are also providing project managers with 20 years of experience and a master's degree at, you know, each of these companies has a rate that's higher than ours. So use that homework that you've done up front before you decide to get onto the schedule to use that in the negotiations. We've got a question here that reads, all of my prices are based on being a subcontractor. Would GSA want me to have managed prime contracts and show the rate for those contracts over all subcontractor contracts? Not sure I understand the question, but if you're a subcontractor to, let's say, ABC company, then ABC company is most likely dictating rates to you that are going to be lower than their rates because they need to make a profit. So those are going to be your, whatever you are billing the prime, then those are your rates, and GSA will want you to offer them something lower than your rates most likely. And then again, that second half, that's the first litmus test. The second litmus test is again GSA going on to the calc site to say, hey, are your rates competitive here? If your rates are coming in pretty low on calc, then maybe you want to wait a year or two and try to get some higher rates before you decide to get onto the schedule, because that's where you could see some red flags and you're not going to be very profitable. So again, do that homework up front to make sure that your rates are competitive so that you're not on the schedule really just, as I'll say, kind of buying contracts and not making any profit in the hopes that the out years that you get a little bit of a bump. I mean, there are companies that do that, but I'm not sure that's the wisest way to go about it. Okay. And I'm going to move on here. So post-award, as I mentioned multiple times, your GSA rates are a price ceiling or a not to exceed rate. So once you are on the schedule and you've got your GSA schedule award, if you are submitting proposals to any departments or agencies that are buying from you through the schedule, you are encouraged to give lower rates. So if your GSA rate for the project manager is $100, then you can certainly offer Department of Interior that's buying through the schedule a rate of $98, trying to beat out the competition on price. However, whoever your customer is, it could be McDonald's, it could be Coca-Cola, it could be Department of Treasury wants to buy from you, but they're not buying from the schedule, you cannot go below your GSA rates. Your GSA rates should always, always, always be your lowest rates possible. And that's the beauty of the schedule. And that's why I keep saying that the whole impetus of the schedule is that it is based on pricing and more specifically your lowest prices. if you do happen to, we'll say, make a mistake and give somebody a rate lower than your GSA rate, again, outside of your schedule, you're going to need to contact GSA and let them know that you have done this, and then basically they will more or less have you lower whatever the product, the service, or the software was to that same lower rate. So again, if your GSA rate for a product program manager is $100 and McDonald's came to you or Department of Treasury came to you and they're not buying from the schedule, and you give them a rate of, let's say, $98, then you're going to have to lower your GSA rate to that same number, the $98. So again, GSA should always, always, always be your lowest price customer. Again, this is why sometimes companies decide the schedule is not in their best interest. Okay, so your GSA, this is just a better visual. GSA rate is $100, whether it's for a widget or it's an hourly rate or it's per user for your software. The GSA schedule purchase, you can quote something lower than your GSA rate because it's happening through the schedule. So there you have wiggle room. Outside of the schedule, doesn't matter if it's a government agency, federal, state, local, Little Sisters of the Poor, or if it's the Pope or McDonald's, you can only take your GSA rate and go higher. And I will send the slides out as well. And again, this is being recorded. So kind of a little bit of a timeline here. This administrative section, as I mentioned, this is more or less if you're kind of doing it yourself, about 1 to 2 weeks. That technical section, which has a little bit more of the narrative and copies of contracts, statement of work. Give yourself about 1 to 2 weeks there. Pricing can sometimes be a little bit cumbersome. I'll say 1 to 3 weeks. Sometimes companies can get it done pretty quickly because they've got, maybe just 7 labor categories. And then I would also leave some room for just a full quality control review, make any corrections, make sure that you're still on that right refresh number, meaning the update to the solicitation. So you want to probably give yourself about 1 to 2 months to get through this. And that is what I would say for just kind of a realistic timeline. Now, some companies can certainly get it done quicker and some may take longer, just depending upon the complexity of the offer, as well as the number of SIN numbers, how big your price list is, somebody offering 10 line items versus somebody offering 1,000, that those timelines are going to be a little bit distorted then. So you will go into the e-offer system, and this should not say digital certificate. Those have more or less been done away with. There's a new way to log into the GSA e-offer system, which is where you submit your proposal. Give yourself a day or so to really just turn off your phone, not respond to emails, and upload all of the documentation. Step away from the computer, forget about it for a day. Either yourself or somebody else can go in and do a quality control review. And so that can all be done within, I'd say, the course of 3 or 4 days, but I just put a week there just in case you do need to go back in and make any edits or change any documentation. So should the quality control review find anything that needs to be edited. So then you hit submit, and everything goes off into the GSA portal. You're going to get a welcome letter. Sometimes before the welcome letter, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that you may get this standard form 527. It's basically a bank reference form. They usually give you about 2 weeks to complete it. This comes in the form of an email, and this is from GSA's Financial Center. So some documentation that you'll need to send over to your bank and keep on top of them to make sure that they don't miss any of these timelines. Okay, and then once the financial piece, should you be lucky enough to get that come to you, GSA will then reach out to you via email for something what they call clarifications. And these are just questions from GSA to clarify what was in your proposal if something was unclear or something needed to be edited. And this basically means that you have passed muster that that GSA is basically said that everything you submitted is correct, but they still maybe just have a few questions. So maybe they want invoice. Maybe they want something redone on one of the price proposal templates. They want clarification on your most favorite customer, your pricing discounting policies, something along those lines. This will come in the form of an email. And let's say you get the email on Monday. There's probably going to be a due date of Wednesday. So it's usually pretty quick. And then sometimes it's a hurry up and wait, and you may not hear from GSA for a couple days. And it's usually one, sometimes 2 rounds of questions. Be responsive. Try to respond before the due date. This will set a good tone with the contracting officer that you're dealing with. And the people that will be on this email will be typically, if you do have a consultant, sometimes it's the consultant and the authorized negotiator. So this is why you want to have at least 2 people internally, C-level exec, a finance person, someone that's pretty good about checking their email and is not out on, let's say, pre-COVID type sales calls, or somebody that's not taking vacation days a lot, because you really do not want to miss these emails, and you want to be responsive, and you don't want to miss the due date. If you do, that could be cause for them to reject your proposal, and you don't want to wait that long in order just to get a rejection. So keep that in mind, that the more authorized negotiators that you put on, the better. Okay. Do you ever get the opportunity to speak with your CO by phone? Well, mostly all of this is happening via email. When you get to the price negotiations, sometimes that happens via email as well. Sometimes it happens via phone. They're usually just pretty quick. I had one this week that was literally 5 minutes. Well, actually 6 minutes, but I think the first minute was really just some pleasantries and introductions, and then we kind of went through what they wanted to negotiate with us, and that was it. Post-award, you'll probably have a better, more opportunity to speak by phone, but yeah, these clarifications are really just back and forth email, and that tends to be the most efficient way to go through this. Okay. And so, yeah, as I said, once you satisfy their questions, they move over to the price negotiations. Like I said, this can be an email. Sometimes they say, hey, you guys are offering us 2% across the board on all your labor categories, and we want 15%, or we want 4%. So don't feel like you need to just accept whatever they are countering your offer with. You can say no, or you can counter back with something. If they say, if you're offering 2% and they say, hey, we want you to offer a 4% discount, that's when you have your comps. You say, hey, we've got, our rates are lower than the 3 competitors that we provided for every line item. The GSA calc site average is higher than our rates. Like, what we're showing is very competitive. So don't feel like you need just to buckle and say yes, otherwise you're not going to get the schedule. That's why you've done all this homework and you've got the backup documentation. So you've got some muscle here in the negotiation room. Sometimes you may then counter and say, well, yeah, maybe we can do 2.5%. And then they may come back and say, how about 2.6%? So this could be a couple rounds. Sometimes this can last a couple days. And depending upon who you get and how responsive they are or not, it can be, 1 day, it can be 1 month. And that's kind of on the high side. And again, it's really luck of the draw on who your contracting officer is. And it looks like there's another question. So the consultants get to speak and communicate with the contracting officer as well. Yes, if you're using a consultant and you list them as an authorized negotiator, then they will be listed in these emails, and it's basically their job. If that's the type of contract that you have with your consultant, if that's something they do, which we do for a living and do day in, day out, then that's why you want them on your side, not to get pushed around in the negotiations. Make sure that your proposal is competitive and compliant. And that you're not giving away the farm, and that the schedule is going to be useful for you. So if they're listed as an authorized negotiator, yes, they're going to be looking at these emails and helping you respond to them, or more or less taking the lead and responding for you or on your behalf. Okay, you're welcome. Okay. Once you have completed the clarifications and the price negotiations, you then move on to what's called the final proposal revision, or the FPR. This is basically a letter that recaps the terms and conditions that you agree to, all the discounts, prompt payment, volume discounts, discounts on each and every line item that you're proposing. GSA will send this over to you. You put it on your letterhead, you sign it, date it, and make sure you complete all of the sections within there. The quicker you get it back to them, the better, the sooner you get the award. And sometimes this can, happen in one day. It can happen, they send you the letter on Monday, you return it to them on Tuesday, and then the award comes, let's say, the following Monday. So at this point, you're pretty much at the finish line. It's really just administrative forms. And then at that point, you should then be able to go into the GSA e-offer system, and through DocuSign, you're able to then sign off on the contract. GSA countersigns, you've got your award, and that's should be all of a 5-second celebration, because the real work then begins. You've got your $25,000 sales quota. The clock is ticking. You should then be going back into your pipeline of all of these, basically going back to the homework that you conducted to say, hey, Joe Smith at Department of Commerce, we were talking to you about our, data migration services, and you said that you prefer to purchase through the GSA schedule. We're now on the schedule. Let's talk about the project that you have. You should not be getting onto the schedule and then saying, oh, now how can we market the schedule? That should have been done before you decided to get onto the schedule. So don't make that mistake of getting, whether it's 8A certified or HubZone or GSA schedule, and then trying to figure out how you're going to market yourself. Make sure that you're doing it strategically, tactically, using data that's out there and is absolutely free on these websites, whether it's BetaSAM, the old FPDS, USA spending, looking at budget forecasts, looking at the SBA scorecard. So much data out there to help you drive where your sales engine needs to go, where your time, effort, and money should be spent. Okay, I'll get off that soapbox here. So post-award, you want to register in SIP, which is the Schedule Input Program, and that's where you upload your price list. This is a software program that, if anybody on the line remembers Atari from, I think that was the 70s, maybe early 80s, it's as archaic as that. Again, Schedule Input Program, SIP. You can find it on the GSA website. It's software that you'll download and upload your price list. You also then, after your SIP price list is approved, you go over to the GSA eBuy site, which is where you're going to get these RFP and RFQ notifications. Do not rely on that as your sales tool. Do not look at these RFPs and say, wow, this was written for us, because it wasn't. Most of these, again, just like betasam.gov, have been worked and wired, built on relationships with program managers within the agencies and departments who have a specific problem that a company has gone in to help solve, and the contracting officer and the program manager have worked together to say, oh, this should be put on GSA schedule. And that's why you're then seeing it on the RFP notifications. There is some sales reporting that will need to be done. So your GSA rates basically have a fee built into them. It's the industrial funding fee, which is 0.75%. The customer will pay that. So for example, if you're on the schedule, Department of Agriculture comes to you and buys $100,000 worth of business through your schedule, then they are paying, built in that $100,000 is this 0.75%, which again is the industrial funding fee. They pay that fee to you, and then you pay that to GSA. There's a question here. The $25,000 quota, this needs to happen annually to stay on the schedule. Is that correct? That is correct. The first year actually is a grace period. So the 25K, you basically have the first 2 years, and then every year thereafter 25K. That's because GSA, again, is a non-appropriated agency, so they make their money through you through this 0.75%. Now, if you sell $5 million to the Air Force but it's not through your schedule, GSA does not care. That 25K needs to come through your schedule. If you don't meet it, they're going to send you a warning letter. They're going to ask for what's in your pipeline, what RFPs have you responded to. If you don't have good answers there, then they're basically going to boot you off the schedule. So again, another good reason to do your homework up front. To make sure that you do have customers and that once you're on the schedule, you do have a pipeline to go back to and kind of close the loop on these sales. Next question says, are you able to update your price list as you get new labor categories? So yes, the only piece that you have to wait 12 months for is if you have a commercial price list and you want to update your prices at the end of every 12-month cycle, you can then update your prices. However, the day after you're awarded the schedule, you can make a contract modification to add new special item numbers, add new products, add new labor categories, anything along those lines. So just the pricing is the one that has the strict timeline on it. Okay, let me close out of this box. I think I advanced accidentally. Bear with me. Okay, and so the sales reporting, companies are either going to have a monthly or quarterly reporting, and that is just part of your back office compliance. It's a cost of doing business. It's the cost of doing business through the GSA schedule. And this is where you pay back to GSA the 0.75%. You also need to report your sales on a quarterly or monthly basis, depending upon if your company is set up for whichever path your company is set up for during the award. And it'll all be in your award documents, whether you're TDR, transactional data reporting, and so forth. So if you have 0 sales for the quarter through your schedule, but $5 million through the Air Force, who did not purchase from the schedule, then you go into the GSA portal and you indicate 0 sales, because 0 sales through your schedule. They don't care about anything else. The only thing they want you to report are your GSA schedule sales. So make sure that you have that, sometimes just a ticker on your calendar, and maybe it's you can either have outside consultants help you or your internal bookkeeping, accounting folks, CFO, whoever it is that's kind of your contract administrator. Next question is, I understand about 6 of 10 GSA company holders do not hit their minimum requirements. Am I going to discuss and outline some steps to avoid this from happening? So if you're talking about requirements as far as meeting the 25K, yes. All of the previous 50 slides when I talked about doing your homework up front to ensure that your customer prefers the schedule, purchases through the schedule, that you've got a sales rep that can help guide some prospects that maybe at times have purchased through the schedule but currently do not prefer it, that can be helpful. So again, this is why doing the homework up front, having a sales strategy, a sales plan, a pipeline of opportunities, of customers, prospects who specifically prefer the schedule is the smartest way to avoid not falling into the trap of having a big goose egg next to your name. So again, the companies that are not meeting the 25K sales quota either have been sold something by a GSA pushy salesperson. They had the build it and they will come strategy, meaning let's get a schedule. Everybody else is doing it. It seems pretty popular. I see everybody with the GSA logo on the back of their business card. I see everybody's got the GSA logo on their website. Yeah, maybe they do, but have you gone in to see how big is the market for your specific product and service, and what are the sales figures for these companies through the schedule that have the GSA logo everywhere? And if it's 0, then maybe there's another path for you to take. Kind of going back to that pie chart that I had outlined. First and foremost, where you're going to find the bulk of opportunities is full and open competition. There's going to be the RFPs and sources sought and RFIs that you see on Beta SAM. So I think to avoid that, you do the homework up front, and sometimes the best answer is maybe to not get a GSA schedule. The timing might not be right. Maybe you need to wait 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, and maybe it's never in your future because your prices are so high because you provide something very specialized. So there's all different ways to make money in this market. You just need to be smart about what's the right path for you. So should you have done that homework and you decided that, yeah, we've got, I don't know, 5, 10 prospects that buy our services through the schedule, our competitors are on the schedule. So you went through the process, now you've got the schedule award. So make sure you put that logo on your website, in your auto signature. This is my favorite, the auto signature, because so many people will, in their auto signature, include their name, their title. They sometimes will not even put a link to their website, but they will include their email address. Well, you're not really doing the government any favors or any of your customers, because if you're sending them an email, they already have your email address. Why not have a link to your website, or make it a specific link to your website that then takes them to the GSA catalog, or directly just to the GSA Advantage site where your pricing is listed. If you've got a capability statement, which you should, the logo should be there. Any other marketing materials that you take maybe to trade shows, I'd throw it there. The back of your business card with your schedule number, your SIN numbers. If you do any sort of newsletter or press release, I would include something there about being awarded the schedule, or maybe you want to wait until you have your first contract through the schedule, because having the schedule, I mean, it's like having a library card. I mean, it's there. Yeah, you went through some hoops and dotted some I's and crossed some T's to get it, but the real value is, once you've got customers and revenue coming through the schedule, which again is why the homework up front is really the most important piece here. So once you've got that pipeline of prospects, before you decide to get onto the schedule, as you were doing this research, and then should you have decided that this is in your best interest, it is going to be profitable, and you're going through the proposal process, continue to touch those customers. Hey, we've submitted our proposal to GSA, we're waiting. Here's where we are in the process, so that once you are awarded the schedule, they're not just getting a random phone call from you out of the blue, that they know that, hey, this ABC company is now on the schedule and I can now get to them. So stay in touch with your prospects. Doesn't matter if it's federal, state, local, or you're just selling to commercial or whoever. It's important to maintain that communication. You also want to make sure that you've got a good back office compliance system in place, and sometimes it could be as simple as just some calendar tickers to go in and do your sales reporting, make sure your SAM record is current and compliant. Keep on top of Gsa Initiated Mods. So these are typically referred to as MAS, M-A-S mods. And this is when GSA makes updates to the solicitation, to the terms and conditions. So whoever the contract administrator is on the contract, they will get an email that says GSA has made a change that you need to go in and accept. And so basically you click on a link, it takes you to a kind of the main portal for GSA, where you handle all the compliance issues, and you'll accept the modification. If you have any of your own initiated mods, this is again updating your price list, adding SINs, adding products, adding software, adding services. You go back into the Gsa E-Offer system, and then you select the icon that says Gsa E-Modification, and you'll need backup documentation just like you did to get onto the schedule. Copies of invoices, if you're adding products, services, or software, copies of contracts and narratives if you're adding new SINs, etc. It's just all of the documentation, and what's required is in that solicitation. So just read it so you know what you're signing up for. So again, that most important best practice is that upfront homework, so that you're not scratching your head saying, how do we meet the 25K threshold, that you do have a pipeline and you do have prospects in there. And I think that's, yeah, we've got a good 20 minutes left here. I'm happy to answer any additional questions. This is a service that we help companies with, and we are a separate entity from the Virginia PTAC. We are not a government entity, but we've worked with companies of all shapes and sizes, domestic, foreign, small, large businesses. We've helped them get onto the schedule. We've helped with their subcontracting plans. same small businesses, we help them get onto the schedule and work with pretty much any and all of the special item numbers. But happy to answer questions about timelines, requirements, pre-award, post-award, anything else that anybody has. And if there are no questions, I don't know if Edna is still up. Okay, here's a question. I think maybe there's a short delay here. What is the rejection rate? I am not sure, and I don't even know a number as far as what companies decide to do it themselves and get rejected versus what companies use consultants or law firms or accountants and get rejected. But oftentimes we will get phone calls from companies who have done it themselves and gotten rejected, and then we help them kind of clean up. So even at, if you're anti-consultant, anti-attorney, finance person to help you with this, I would at least say hire somebody for quality control to take a look at your documentation before you submit it. And that way you're using, you're making a good investment. Because once you submit that proposal, you're going to be sitting around waiting for, 1 to 3 to 4 to 5 months, depending upon the SIN number and how complex your offering is, and et cetera. So you don't want to wait just to find out that you've been rejected. Now, if you do get rejected, you can turn around and submit the proposal the next day to get back on. What's the easiest way to find out about agencies that have their own schedule? I would just go on to the various websites for the agencies, and we have them listed on our website under the resources section. So if you're looking for, NASA SUB, Navy Seaport E, and all the other agency contract vehicles, I also know, I think Bloomberg Gov publishes that data, as probably does Deltek and all the other data aggregators that are out there. And you might actually be able to find it, now that I think about this, on betasam.gov. There should be a list of additional contract vehicles for the agencies. GSA is widely used, but again, sometimes the agencies got tired of paying the 0.75%, so they decided to stand up their own contract vehicles. Okay, at one point, the IT-70, so GSA had for IT service providers, kind of a fast track, which just required the submitter, the vendor, to include additional information, competitive analysis, etc. And yes, that does still exist for only specific SIN numbers, so that IT professional services, yes. Hopefully that answered the question. And let me just make sure I haven't missed any. Yep, so as I mentioned, I've taught this class in the past. If you go to our website under events, you'll scroll down and you'll see the PTAC logo with hours, and you'll get the link to the slides and a previous recording. This one we'll try to get up tonight or tomorrow morning at the latest. And Edna, I'm not sure if you're still there, but I think Edna from the PTAC will send everybody a survey to complete about the class. I appreciate you all being here. Hopefully you learned something. If you got questions or need help, feel free to reach out directly. We do everything from modifications to helping you with audits, back office compliance, getting onto the schedule, cleaning up anything that maybe has been rejected, etc. So, and sorry this was not in person, but hopefully next year we'll be in person again, if not sooner. But I'm going to go ahead and close this out. I don't think Edna is back. Okay, and again, thank you all for the comments here. And yeah, I will. We'll email the recording, like I said, tonight or tomorrow, along with the slides, and then we'll put them on our website. But if you're in a big hurry, just go to our website under events and scroll down. I think we did this maybe in March or April. And I think we're doing it again in July. So if you want an update if anything between now and then has changed, it'll be included in the next session of this. So I'm going to go ahead and end this as I don't see any more questions. I thank you all for your time, and okay. Thank you all for the comments again. I appreciate it, and we'll get the recording out to you all. Bye-bye.